What's up, friends? Happy Monday. Welcome to another episode of Learn with Lo. Super excited to be joining you guys again today as we really work our way through some more deep dive in the world of functional medicine and nutrition. So we get to have this opportunity. If you're new here, every Monday I like to go live and really make it a little bit more of a long form content video where we have an opportunity to really take a lot more detail around a certain topic, things that I'm seeing in private practice, things that I'm getting questions about from you guys, and just relevant topics in the world of all things healthcare, right? It is a wild, wild west out there. And so my passion is to really create a safe space where we can talk in a very educational format, an entertaining format, to be very candid and honest about the experiences that a lot of people are having in the world of nutrition, functional medicine, conventional healthcare, hormone balance, right? It's a very like I said, kind of a wild, wild west out there with a lot of different options. And so I want to make a platform where people feel heard and seen and validated in their experience, but also where we come to learn, right? We get to be really curious about what our body is experiencing, what our body is trying to communicate with us, and really take that into the world of understanding how to source a lot of that self-healing through various different treatments and interventions that maybe don't always fall under the conventional healthcare model. Right? So this is a big need, a big gap in the healthcare system right now. And that's where I'm super passionate about being part of the movement to be able to fill that gap that a lot of people, like I said, are very much interested in these days. So if you have been following along with us on our little series, we've been talking all things what is functional medicine, what is not functional medicine, which then led us into this very in-depth, which I could go on for multiple different series, and maybe I will, about this concept that I call the hormone hierarchy, right? And if, again, you saw my stories this morning, you saw me even discuss a little bit more about this hormone hierarchy. If you missed our conversation talking about how to navigate the body in the right order of operations, that was a Learn with O episode 2 weeks ago. So you can go back to my reels. All of them are recorded under my reels, and you can find that episode and catch up on the episode as well too. So we discussed this concept that's called the hormone hierarchy for a reason. I do feel very passionate about the fact that having this understanding and respect for the body's natural order of operations really does set me apart. Definitely sets me apart from conventional medicine, because they're not thinking about that or talking about that at all, because that's not what they're designed for, right? They're not designed for proactive or preventative health. They're also not designed for helping someone live more optimally. They are there, when I say they, more of a conventional medicine system and its subspecialties are there for emergency circumstances. And thank bless that they are there. We absolutely need them for those emergent situations. But then we have a lot of individuals that are trying to use that same system for chronic disease, right? And it just doesn't work that way. Like chronic conditions, chronic skin conditions, chronic mood changes and anxiety, chronic hormone imbalances, chronic gut issues, chronic autoimmune patterns, chronic weight issues, right? And like these are not situations where conventional medicine really shines, because their wheelhouse is more emergent and emergency care, right? This is where functional medicine does really shine, though, with a lot of those more chronic conditions. But yet you get into even the functional medicine space, and I can tell you right now, it is a very broad spectrum of what one practitioner might consider functional medicine versus what another practitioner does, right? So I think what really sets me apart in all of those spaces between a conventional approach or even other functional providers, I dare even put myself in that category, because I'm like, yes, I guess I kind of fit in that category, but I'm kind of a category all in its own, because I see the flaws and the gaps in the functional medicine model as well too. And so the biggest thing I feel like that really sets that apart is the understanding of the hormone hierarchy. And that is us understanding that the body does have a very innate self-healing system if we get out of the way. And also if we start to put in some factors in the right order of operation so that we can have a positive domino effect across the board, right? And I think a classic example of this comes up so often in just my day-to-day conversations, but I'll even just bring a conversation to light of having with a a new prospective client who had been through the rigmarole of different practitioners, right? They had gone down more of the conventionalist standpoint to roll out some more serious gut issues. Everything came back clean. They just kind of got handed more of a Linzess or like a IBS type treatment and walked away. They then sought out more of a stand-up hormone clinic who got them started on some testosterone, which then ended up making their gut issues worse and created 5 more issues. And then they ended up at a different clinic who prescribed them weight loss peptides that made them incredibly nauseous and bloated, so they had to quit those. And then she went to another functional practitioner who essentially ran a Dutch test on her and gave her like $300 worth of supplements and sent her on her way, right? That's where she found me. And she's like, I have a hard time trusting other practitioners. I don't exactly know where to turn. And I'm like, yes, you're not wrong. She's like, I think I'm just going about this the wrong way. Can you help me? And I was like, yes, I 100% validate what you're experiencing, because I mean, I'll agree with you that you are going about it the wrong way, but it's not because of ill intent. It's just because you haven't been able to work with a practitioner that actually understands how to order of operate these types of things. We can't start with hormones. We can't start with supplements, right? I'm like, that's out of order of operations. Those things might be super helpful in our journey for sure, but there's certain foundational pieces that unless we have those in play, we don't even know what we need, right? It's like, we don't even know extra things until we have some of those order of operations satisfied first. So that's really what catches you up to where we're at today. And I just wanted to give you, like I said, these type of examples come up multiple times a day, every day, as I'm interviewing for new potential clients, or I'm working with current clients and they're talking about their past experiences and what has or hasn't worked, right? So sometimes it's just a matter of understanding that there's lots of different tools available, but there's a very specific and customized approach for each individual person. And one of the biggest things that I know is a barrier of what a lot of people's success has been is not starting with a solid food forward foundation. And so that's where last week we really got to discuss where a lot of individuals struggle with reaching their health and wellness goals because they have unresolved disordered eating habits. And that's where we got into that conversation last week. And then we want to kind of continue on that journey of that hormone hierarchy as we talk about nervous system regulation today. So again, I truly believe it's no accident. And I feel passionately that there's like my sole purpose is to really be part of this movement in providing more visibility and awareness and education to the masses, really for the first time in history, right? I want you guys to understand that you as the patient, we're living in a really, really cool time of healthcare, right? Because you as the patient, you're in the driver's seat, right? If you don't know it or you didn't realize it already, let me be the first to make you aware that you control that trajectory kind of for the first time ever. Like you as the patient, you get to advocate for what labs you want run and for what options of testing that you have or you feel called towards, right? You don't have to just settle for what one doctor or one insurance company is willing to approve despite your symptoms, right? You as the patient also have so much information at your fingertips with like platforms like this, right? You have so much information to be able to take and interpret a lot of those tests and identify some early warning signs that maybe your practitioner didn't identify, right? You as the patient, you also get to determine what treatment modalities you feel most aligned with, right? Are you using a provider that just uses pharmaceutical treatment, but you're a little bit more natural, holistic minded? Great, then seek out a practitioner that uses more of those modalities. You don't have to just be stuck with prescriptive or surgical interventions if you believe in a more self-healing approach like I do. Or you as the patient, you get to seek out providers that offer consistent follow-up, right? And consistent support. Ideally, someone that's meeting with you and working through your goals on a monthly basis, right? You don't have to settle for just a nurse's line that never calls you back or makes you wait 8 to 12 weeks to be seen by someone, right? So if you want different care than what you've received, you have to be willing to go outside of what you've already tried. So that isn't to say that the conventional or pharmaceutical medicines are bad. That's not what I'm saying here, but more so to help us all see that it's not the only option when it comes to healthcare, and it's maybe not always the right or effective path for you. So I think that's a really big reason why a lot of those things are missing the mark, is because it's completely bypassing our body's hormone hierarchy and the understanding that we know that the body has a lot of these self-healing mechanisms if we kind of just get out of the way. So when we talked about, like I said, disordered eating, that was the first step of our hormone hierarchy last week, right? Where we really got to discover 65% of American women ages 25 to 45 display disordered eating habits, right? Our fasting, skipping meals, cheat days, binge eating patterns, laxative, diuretic, enema use, rigid rituals around food, guilt and shame associated with food, earning and burning our food based off of what we ate through exercise, right? And I just see this so often that a lot of women don't even know that they have a lot of these disordered eating tendencies, and so therefore they're not really getting the right help. They're just getting more of the same stuff, especially through diet culture. So we really want to address this, like I said, from a brain down approach, but also from a body up approach. There's both sides of the equation that really need to be taken into account here. And when we think about like why I've been hammering home so much this concept of food forward, is yes, because I want everybody to have a very calm and confident relationship with food. It's a relationship that you're going to have to foster for the rest of your life. But also because that right there, our nutritional patterns are our first step in stress management. Nobody's talking about that, right? That probably right there, how you eat, when you eat, what you eat, how much you eat, that is probably your biggest needle mover in terms of creating more stress in your life and in your body, or taking stress off of your life and your body, right? Is our relationship with food. So that's why I'm so big about starting there, because yes, we're going to be talking about things like other layers of the hormone hierarchy and stress and nervous system dysregulation. But that's why I started with food first, because it's impossible for someone to talk about nervous system regulation or really regulate a nervous system that is not fueled well. Point blank, that's like, do not pass go, do not collect $200 if we're going to talk about stress, nervous system regulation, rewiring subconscious patterns. Like the body cannot be in a state of undernourishment, blood sugar dysregulation, or inflammatory nutrition patterns. It just will not work. Let me go ahead and put that out there right now. So if that's something that you've tried before, that's probably why it hasn't worked, because you've tried to bypass that relationship with food instead of really meeting it head on in the right order of operation. So once we really think about this food forward approach, we understand that then naturally, once we start to get more of that relationship with food, whether it's body up patterns that we talked about, GI dysfunction, nutrient deficiencies, or this brain down approach, we want to then meet that with an equal amount of nervous system regulation. And when I talk about the nervous system, it's still, like I said, amazes me how many people are kind of misunderstanding exactly what the nervous system is, what the nervous system does. So let's just start with high level overview. I've done multiple different Learn with Low episodes on this, so you can always go back and catch yourself up on those. But when we talk about the nervous system, we're really talking about what we call the autonomic nervous system, or what happens in our subconscious, like we are not in control or unaware of it. There's two different sides. We have our parasympathetic, or our rest, digest, and heal side of our nervous system. And then we have our fight or flight state, which fight, flight, freeze. Sometimes we also talk about freeze patterns in that as well too, right? And that is more of our sympathetic nervous system. So we have these two halves of our nervous system. It's not about always being in rest, digest, and heal. It's about being able to switch back and forth between those states very fluidly. And it's about recognizing when it's appropriate to turn on the sympathetic nervous system, we turn it off, but then we also have the ability to turn it right back on, off again, right? So that's really what a healthy nervous system is. When I talk about nervous system regulation, it's not always being in the state of like peace, calm, zen, meditation. It's about being able to respond to life stress, but then shut it off. Right now in our today's world, we don't really have a great turn it off type of pattern. And this is where we want to start to intervene and make sure that we're taking advantage of, like I said, those controllable stressors, but also then taking into account where is our body primed for a state of fight or flight, and how can we very quickly recognize it. So like I said, I don't want to go much farther without also reiterating that like there, like I said, is kind of a correct order of operations here. So it just amazes me that I continue to get comments from people like, yeah, my provider ran some tests and put me on XYZ hormones and sent me on my way. Or I had all of these tests done and I was told to buy and take these 30 supplements. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm not saying that any of those tools that you got were bad, but they're out of order. Like, we need to talk about hormones first. We need to talk about stress management first. We need to talk about gut health first. We need to talk about detoxification first. We need to talk about so many other things before we're talking like all of these fancy dancy supplemental protocols and hormones. Like, great, awesome, but like not necessarily within always the right order of operations. And so then people get started on these things expecting big success and having very little success. So it's not that these things are inherently bad. They just may not be the over promising results that are once told that they will deliver, right? So I counter these questions a lot of times with like, well, did they talk to you about your nutrition, or did they ask you about appetite or fullness cues? Did they discuss like what you were eating or when you were eating or how you were eating? Most of the time they're like, nope, they didn't. I'm like, excellent. Big giant face palm on that one. And notoriously, those people that kind of follow these recommendations blindly, sometimes they not only don't get any better, but sometimes they often even get worse. So that's why when we're talking about the nervous system, the first stop has got to be food. Just like we talked about last week, if there's not enough energy going into the system, just point blank. If there's not enough energy intake to match energy output, are you eating enough energy to sustain the current output that you have, either for your exercise routine or your activity? I will say most women don't. Also, are you eating enough nutrients to cover your stress loss? Do you know how much stress like actually depletes our minerals and our vitamins? A whole lot. So the more stressed you are, like mental, emotional stress, you actually have a higher need, right? Not less, but more, right? Most people are not covering their nutrient needs to override how much stress they have. So that is a huge mismatch that they're going to really struggle with long term, right? So with these, we want to kind of take that into account, or we want to take into account blood sugar regulation, like erratic blood sugar. Are they even meeting enough to meet their energy or nutrient needs? Are you eating in a way that aligns to blood sugar balance? Or are you just like erratic meal timing? You're out there thinking coffee and egg white bites and a protein bar is a meal, or you're out there thinking that like a protein shake is an actual meal, or maybe you're eating your biggest meal at night. Like, these are things that actually really matter when it comes to nervous system regulation and our body's overall cortisol production and stress response. So you may not think it, but that's why I started with the nutrition side of things for good reason, because that is the baseline part of nervous system regulation. But then we can take all of these great foundations into understanding that state of nervous system, even if it's not a physical piece of putting us in a fight or flight, like eating in a blood sugar dysregulated state or not eating enough to meet our energy needs, like that's enough right there to put you into a fight or flight response. But let's just play hypotheticals and say that you do have a lot of those great nutritional foundations covered in terms of eating sufficiently and eating, your nutrient dense foods and all of those types of good things. Let's just say you have those solid foundations in place, or you've done my Master Your Metabolism Masterclass and you have all of those great foundations in place, but you still know that stress is an issue, or you suspect that stress is an issue. What do we do for that next follow-up step, right? That's where we have to recognize that a body that is in a state of fight or flight is what we call an anti-healing state. So when I say healing, that could be anything, right? You have skin issues that won't go away. You have gut issues that won't go away. You have weight that you're holding on to that won't go away. You have night sweats and hormonal imbalances, you have thyroid disease, you have autoimmune conditions, right? Anything that you're trying to overcome, put into remission, reverse, a state of fight or flight is an anti-healing state. The body is not worried about any sort of rest, recover, or repair at that point in time. It is all geared around survival. Right? And so just know that whatever condition you're trying to encounter or really put a lot of effort behind improving your health, that could be one of those Achilles heels when it comes to reaching your overall goals, right? So know that in that state of fight or flight, when I call that like an anti-healing state, that's what I mean, is because the body is not prioritizing recovery at that point in time, whether that's weight loss, cholesterol issues, you name it, right? So I want to give you guys, like I said, a little bit of clinical pearls behind the scenes of how do you put yourself kind of in my shoes and be able to recognize somebody that is in a state of fight or flight. I can't tell you how many times I have individuals where I try to, again, kind of bring up this nervous system conversation or talk about the influence of stress in their life. And immediately it's like headphones get put on, eyes get glazed over, and they're like, la, 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 la. They're like, I'm not stressed. I don't feel stressed. Or they kind of experience like, I don't have any more stress than the average person does, right? I feel like I see other people that are more stressed than I am, or I have other people that have the same amount of commitments on their plate as I do, right? So it's not always about a state of actually perceiving it. We're actually really, really bad at perceiving it. So this is where I want to give you some clinical pearls so that, because I, as a clinician, I can't just rely on someone's subjective view of that, because sometimes, like I said, we're not really in tune with that. And that might be something that gets missed in my clinical evaluation if I don't have some other tools to be able to go to kind of be able to recognize it. Obviously, are there physical symptoms based off of somebody's lab work? Yes, absolutely there are. There are plenty of Learn with Flow episodes you can go back to and start to recognize how you can identify different states of fight or flight or different states of nervous system dysregulation, even on lab work. But today, I want to give you some clinical pearls that you can actually take into some self-reflection for yourself, and things that you can start to recognize in other people too. Very lovingly. Obviously, we're not going to be going around telling people it's like, you're in fight or flight, and you're in fight or flight, and you're in fight or flight because Lauryn told me how to recognize it, right? No, it's more so being able to be very empathetic with someone. And if someone is coming at you kind of hot, you can start to recognize, you're like, oh, okay, I know exactly what they're experiencing. I know what their body is feeling, and it doesn't become quite as much of like, call it like a triggering experience. You're able to manage your own emotions and own response as well too, once you kind of understand how to identify that in somebody else. So when I look at, like I said, this state of fight or flight, one of the best ways that I've always learned how to identify someone in a state of fight or flight really comes down to 3 different things that you might pick up on someone. These are all different preoccupations. And what I mean by that are things like we're very focused on, we're very hyper vigilant about, we talk about a lot, we focus on a lot, right? So here is your, like I said, clinical pearls, how to identify very quickly yourself or somebody else that is in a nervous system state of fight or flight. So your nervous system may be in one of those anti-healing patterns if you have a preoccupation with any of the 3 following. Number 1, a preoccupation with your body. Number 2, preoccupation with your environment. Or 3, a preoccupation with time, right? So I'm going to go into these a little bit more, but when you see a nervous system that's in a state of fight or flight, just know at the core, that nervous system is looking to feel seen, is looking to feel soothed, and is looking to feel safe. Right? So sometimes in those moments where a nervous system like does not feel seen or soothed or safe, it does really crazy stuff, right? It does that to try to seek those types of feelings, right? So a lot of times when I start to describe the preoccupation, you're like, oh, so someone that's preoccupied with their environment and they're out there trying to like buy the best new car, keep up with the Joneses, buy a new house, like all of these types of things. It's like, that's them thinking that that's going to help them feel seen, right? It's like, yes, a lot of times it is someone that feels seen, right? So a lot of times just know that, like I said, it's a perfectly healthy pattern. These are not judgmental by any means. A lot of times, like I said, they're entirely subconscious because that body is in a state of fight or flight and that individual just may not know it. So let's break each one of these down a little bit because I think it's always helpful to kind of see. So number 1 is seeing someone that has a preoccupation with their body. So a lot of times I will see individuals that are in a state of fight or flight when they are someone that's constantly making comments about their body, nitpicking different body parts that they're unsatisfied with, comparing themselves to others, sizing up others based off of their body appearance. classic fight or flight, right? Especially those individuals, like you'll see them, they're like constantly dieting, constantly buying the newest like anti-aging thing. They're constantly chasing the next procedure, right? It's like they're very hyper focused like on their body and on their external appearance, almost to the point where that's all they can think about. And it's very distracting for them, right? Is just living in their body, being with their body, because all they see are flaws and negative, right? That's a telltale sign of someone that's in more fight or flight, right? Other people might have a preoccupation with time. Someone that is in fight or flight always feels like there's not enough time, or it's not the right time, or there's like, I'm always someone that's always running late, right? Or someone that puts things off or procrastinates a lot. Classic fight or flight. And again, these are not, again, to be judgmental, they're to be aware. You're like, oh, that's me, I do that. That's me. And I know that when I do that, I must be covering up something that I'm actually legit like stressed or mulling over, right? So we see these habits come up sometimes in individuals periodically during certain seasons of life where their nervous system is in fight or flight. And then there's some people that are just always this way. And it takes us having a conversation for them to realize they're like, oh, so my nervous system state is kind of part of the healing right now. And me displaying some of these preoccupations with like my body or my time, or me just trying to kind of distract from that. Yes, they are. Good. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we can kind of like really make some leaps and bounds forward. And then the final place where I see some people in that state of fight or flight is a preoccupation with their environment. Someone that is constantly chasing the next new thing, the next new car, the next new house, the next new shoes, the next new handbag, keeping up with the Joneses. They think that happiness is when I get here. When I get here, we'll be happier. When I get here, I'll do something, right? And it's usually them trying to use their external environment to create a sense of safety, soothing, and seen within their body. They're like, I don't feel that within my body, so I'm grasping at things in my external environment to try to make that feeling go away. Usually doesn't work, usually makes the gap bigger, but it's our like innate human initial response, right? So again, all of these things are not unhealthy. They're perfect. I'm like, oh, look, your nervous system is working exactly the way that we expect it to. But we want to start to recognize these things so that we can intercept them and not get distracted. Because what happens is individuals are actually starting to be very inefficient, right? They are doing all of the things, but they're doing all of the wrong things, or they're focusing on all of the wrong things, right? They're like, I don't get it. I don't understand why I'm not getting better. I'm dieting. I'm low carb. I'm exercising. I did this cool sculpting treatment. I bought new running shoes, and I'm waking up earlier. I'm spending all my time doing this, and I'm all these things. And I'm like, you can be very, very busy, but still be lazy, right? Ooh, bold statement. You can be very, very busy, but you can also be lazy. And lazy is not a bad thing. It's more just like, I'm busy with all of these things and I'm not actually facing the real issue, right? So sometimes that's, like I said, a very confronting conversation that sometimes I have to have with people, but with love, of saying like, hey, I think you're doing some really, really solid stuff, but I think you're putting so much energy and emphasis into all of these things when really like this is really our glaring opportunity. And I think if we put more of our focus and energy over here, we'd probably see a bigger return on investment, right? So that's where, like I said, I wanted you guys to be able to kind of sit in my seat a little bit and feel confident of like, oh, when do I do that? When do I see myself displaying some of these preoccupations with my body, my time, or my environment? Usually that's like a key indicator even for myself of like, ooh, yeah, I'm in a fight or flight. I need to take some time to dissect that. I need to sit with that. I need to face that, not run away from it, not try to cover it. And obviously like all of those patterns of like, okay, here in our conversations today, we're just talking about how to identify it, right? How to identify it within yourself, how to identify it within others. Obviously it's without the scope of this quick little video to be able to talk how we get people out of that. That's part of the work that I do with individuals in a one-on-one setting. So if that's something that, like I said, you're more curious about, these are all things that come up within my practice and my philosophies. So definitely, like I said, do we talk about nutrition in here? Yes. Do we talk about gut health? For sure. Do we talk about hormones? Yes. But do we also talk about like the state of your nervous system and what you're really distracting yourself from? Hell yeah, we do, right? Like that's all part of the journey. And so that's where I always want people to understand, like, we're going to attack it from all angles because you are one person, you are one body, right? You're one physical body, but you have a mental, emotional, and spiritual beings to that body. And if we're not taking all of those into account, then that's probably why you're jumping from practitioner to practitioner, because you're seeking the whole approach. And all you're getting are these little bite-sized pieces and nuggets that don't really put it all together. Right? That's what I'm here for. So if you're interested in learning more about the lowdown method, not just for things like nervous system regulation, but for overall health and wellness, you can click over to the link in my profile. It will take you right to my website where you can sign up for your not free consultation, excuse me. You can sign up for your functional wellness consultation, and that will get us started on our journey going forward. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys. Start to recognize when you notice yourself in preoccupation of body, time, or environment, because it's a telltale sign that that nervous system may need a little bit of TLC. So have a great rest of your week and happy Monday.